Any funeral in the village was always held over lunchtime so that the employees could stand on the main street, and I can still remember the men in the boiler suits standing soft cap in hand while the hearse went past.
I think that's a big enough bell for Coolbuck.
Isn't it? It's about to say, it's all you would need. Like,
It's all we need.
That wee sound would travel all over the mountain, mind you.
This man doesn't know the difference between a grape and a pitch.
I know the difference now, right? That's a grape, right? And if I took them two out, that'd be a pitchfork.
I could never get this stone out of my head. And 20 years later, I went back up again to look for the stone. And when I went back to look for the stone in the swamp, the stone was gone.
Really?
The stone was gone.
The waters of this loch have served the local population very well over the centuries because a small stream flows out of it, and on its banks enterprising people built their mills and used its power to provide for themselves. A village grew up on those banks, and the waters also indirectly provided the name of that village. It translates into English as the fort at the mouth of the ford. Welcome to Lisbellaw in County Fermanagh. The stream in question is a modest affair, hardly requiring a fording place, and there's nowhere on the 2 level miles that it travels from Loch Eyes to the village of Lisbellaw for it to build up a head of water. So, back in the mid-1800s, it arrived at work ill-prepared, it would seem, for the enormous task those Victorian industrialists demanded of it, which was to power their all-important woollen mill. John Gray Vesey Porter of Bellisle, the landlord of this area, was a man of great entrepreneurial vision who also courted controversy for most of his life. He must have been proud of the village of Lisbellaw because he founded his own newspaper, which he called the Lisbellaw Gazette, in which he railed against the things that vexed him. But he also put Lisbellaw on the map in other ways. And in the year 1858, one of the most enduringly useful things he did for the people of this village was to invite 2 Scottish men, John Henderson and John Eadie, to come to Lisbellaw to impart their skills in carding, spinning and weaving wool to a local workforce, and to run a factory here which would turn out high-quality products that would provide employment for the majority of the population. The Henderson and Eadie Woolen Factory did precisely that for the next 107 years. And the Lisbellaw travel rug was just one of the products that brought fame to the tiny village built on the hard rocks of Fermanagh. I'll tell you more about Ronnie Crawford presently. First of all, he's going to explain how those Victorian problem solvers took the small stream that snakes around the base of the village and harnessed its latent but surprisingly effective power.
The water originated up at top of the mountain, fed down into Loch Eyes, which is about 2 miles away,
Right.
and follows the road from Loch Eyes down to Lisbellaw and comes underneath the main street in a few places. But to get the water high enough to feed the turbine, the mill had to get it up. So this here was created, actually constructed it out in the field here and rolled it in on rails. And when we were boys at school, you were classified as a big boy when you could walk the top of that without falling off it or falling into it.
Right.
But it was a feat to be able to walk that.
So there's more broken legs and God knows what else happened up there.
I can
Nobody-
never remember anybody falling off it.
Right. But that was, you had to be dared to do that.
Oh,
Is
you
that
had
the
to be,
idea?
you were a big boy when you could walk across it.
Your mommy wouldn't have been too happy if he letting you do that.
Mommy
I would
didn't
imagine.
know about things like that, you know, but
But the water anyway, Ronnie, it was essential to the whole operation.
everything, that's why the mill was built in the location it is,
Beside the stream in the first place.
and low enough to get the head of water to feed it.
Right. Whenever they were finished with the water, of course, back it
It
goes
went
into
on
the stream.
and it fed Greenaway sawmill at Hollybank, and it fed, there was another little mill at Cappy. So there was 2 mills I think got the use of the water coming here, Henderson Eadie
And then 2 more.
and
after.
2 more.
Isn't it amazing how important a wee stream like that actually was
Yeah.
for the whole of industry?
The
back
whole
in
of
that
industry.
time? Extraordinary. Ronnie Crawford knows a thing or two about water because he started out in life as a plumber. Together with a friend of his who was a carpenter, he set up a business supplying timber to the building trade, and eventually he was able to take over the derelict site vacated by the Henderson and Eadie factory, which finally had to close its doors in 1965. The little stream that kick-started the industry here would hardly meet Ronnie's energy requirements for a single day. So vast is the operation that he and his family have established here. Where once Lisbellaw supplied the rest of the country with woolen products, it now supplies the rest of the country with wooden products. And in the process, of course, just as Henderson and Eadie did, the Crawfords provide employment for the local population. But in the midst of all the cutting-edge technology and state-of-the-art robotic automation, Ronnie has preserved much of the character and atmosphere of the old woolen mill, which was such a dominant feature of the village's past and of his own childhood. We're standing now under a glass roof that once poured daylight onto the busy weavers below.
So, I would say a Lisbellaw rug must be an antique now at this stage.
Collector's item.
Collector's item, surely. You can see why.
From I was a very early age around the town, I remember the men coming up at lunchtime when the horn blew. The men carried rolls of this on their shoulder up and brought them to various mill houses around the town.
Right.
The ladies sat out on the footpath in the summer, making the tassels on the end of them.
Well, this wasn't part of the,
This wasn't part of the
process.
This was done by hand by local ladies
Get away.
in the village, yeah.
Right. That must have been some sight. They were sitting out on the pavement in the summertime
Oh,
doing
yeah.
all of this.
Yeah.
And did they do a whole woolen operation within the factory itself?
Everything was done within the factory here. Everything from the teasing, weaving, everything. And where we're standing here, this rug was probably woven this building in here. But this was the only employment of any quantity in the area. If you got a job in Henderson 80s, you were flying.
And that was you for life?
That was you for life.
Because I remember hearing a story about an old lady.
Yes.
She was in her 80s or 90s at this stage.
Lizzie Whiteley, she lived next door
Is that right?
to us. And she always said she'd never been on a bus, she'd never been on a train, and she'd never been in tempo. And I was a
Tempo a few miles away.
cheeky young teenager who just got the licence, and I said to my mother, if I could get her in the car, she'd soon be in tempo.
Get away. You never did.
I never got her in the car.
So her whole life
was
here.
was spent working in the mill here.
And there were plenty like her as well, I would imagine.
plenty like
so
her.
About for 100 years then, that would have been the mainstay of the entire population, most of the entire
Yes.
population. So when was it that calamity happened? Was it
Yes.
that happened suddenly, or did everybody know it was coming?
Everybody, the writing was on the wall. Everybody knew it was coming. Nylon came in to play, and other fabrics, cheaper fabrics and imports, and the good old Lisbellaw blanket that lasted forever.
And it's still here. This one here has to be at least 50 years
Yes.
old, probably a lot. And it's as good as new.
Good as new.
Yeah.
That was the problem, they said. The stuff was too good and it lasted too long.
Isn't that strange? It's ironic, you made such a good garment. You
Yeah.
put yourself out of business practically.
Yeah.
The quality of that workmanship was no doubt a source of great pride for the Henderson and Eadie families, just as the fact that they have now replaced the woolen mill in terms of providing employment at Lisbellaw is a source of pride for the Crawford family. The hill of the hard rocks on which the village stands has a gentle gradient compared to the aforementioned Topped mountain nearby, a lofty peak which dominates the landscape in every direction, and on whose lower slopes you'll find plenty of evidence that humankind has been living, farming and worshipping here for many thousands of years, and they're still doing so in the 21st century, though the evidence of such activities in the present day is somewhat neater and more compact. Coolbuck Mountain Church is part of the Lisbellaw Church of Ireland parish, and every Sunday the rector sets off up the mountain for the 3 o'clock service in what has to be the smallest church in the country. Ann Orr lives nearby and carries out the duties of a sexton with great dedication.
We've had here over the years up to 100. And certainly
100 people in here,
100.
seriously?
They didn't all fit in. So one of the nights was a lovely fall of snow, and we had the people right out onto the road and back in, and the rector and whoever assists with the communion has to go around the pews, out onto the road and back in again.
Your family goes back a long way with regard to this church, and you personally. Did you tell me you were given the keys of this when you were only 11 years old?
But in 1969, Joe Mackenzie, the then caretaker, he died suddenly. And we were locking up that evening. I'd gone to his wife that morning to get the key and light the fire. And when we were locking up, I handed Chancellor St. Ledger the key, and he took my hand and handed it back.
You're in charge now, he said.
So I brought it home and we hung it up, and then our family looked after it, and then Mum retired, went to Lisbellaw in 1985, and then when she became less fit, she would have come up here to cut the grass and dig around the weeds, and she did all that hard work over the years. So I'm here now.
Local stonemason John Johnston built the tiny church at the behest of the landed Ford family in the latter half of the 1800s for the princely sum of £8. It was originally intended to be a schoolhouse, but was never used as such. The small Coolbuck congregation are intensely proud of their church and its location near Topped Mountain, and relish community activities which celebrate their heritage, such as the occasion when they engaged the expertise of bronze sculptor Holger Lons to teach them how to cast a replica of a traditional monastic handbell using what's called the lost wax process. Anne Orr learnt it very thoroughly.
So I had to dig a pit, light a fire, get the bellows going and pump it up until it was really hot. And then we had a thing called a crucible, and it's like a container, and into it you put your tin and copper pieces, and it melts down until it's that nice pink molten liquid that you pour, which is very, very hot. But in the meantime, we all had to learn to make a bell out of green wax. So we had to shape our bell and design it and put whatever we wanted on it. And then we had to get a mixture of cow manure, cattle hair and soil, and we had to mix that up in big buckets. And our little bell then had to be covered. This bell was covered in about ½ an inch on each side, totally encased in this mixture of soil and manure and hair. And it was important that it had to be completely covered. And then you left 2 little holes, and 1 little hole you poured in the hot liquid, and as it poured in, the wax flowed out the other little hole in the other end. So that's why
the wax
the
was to keep it open before you poured
it
this
kept
in.
the shape.
I see.
So what you get is exactly what you had in wax. And you can see there a wee mistake. So it obviously wasn't properly sealed there. You can see that a little.
We'll not talk about that at all. The rest
This
of us
here represents Topped Mountain. On Topped Mountain, if you go to the museum in Dublin, there's a nice little pot found on Topped Mountain, and also a dagger and a gold band. So we decided to put that on and polish it.
That makes a great sound.
Yeah. So I think that's a big enough bell for Coolbuck.
Isn't it? It's about to say, it's all you would need.
That's all we need.
That wee sound would travel all over the mountain, mind you.
Yeah.
And it's within earshot of that bell, along a laneway below Topped Mountain, that I encounter another group of people stoking up a bit of their heritage, resurrecting a lime kiln when we come back. A shared interest in local history is a great way of bringing communities together, especially if that interest leads to a festive occasion that involves communal barbecues and celebrations such as you might have when you've refurbished an old industrial-sized lime kiln like the one on Tom Fair's farm on Topped Mountain. The Cavanagh and Garvey local history groups managed to get a bit of funding from Fermanagh District Council a few years back to do precisely that as a cross-community project, and it was a great success. So much so that Tom and Seamus Martin and their friends are about to refurbish the experience, if you like, just for the sake of getting together again. It says 1850, but Tom thinks it may be older. It was never worked in Tom's father's day, but prior to that, the lime that had burnt would have been essential for sweetening the acidic soil of these parts to ensure a healthy growth of grass. Topped Mountain is far from any natural source of lime, so the labour involved would have been considerable.
Where do you think they got the lime from, or where did they get the lime?
Lime came from Carson's Quarry.
Where's that?
Balcoo.
That's a right wee distance away from
It is. It came on the railway.
Right.
Lisbellaw.
Right. Worth a while to take it up on the railway.
They do it in horses' carts up from Lisbellaw up to here.
A lot of the land would have been cut out for turf, been cut out bog, and then been used maybe to grow a bit of grass.
Right,
and at that stage it would have been very acidy.
Right.
So the lime probably was a good help to it.
Describe what it looked like before you started doing any work on it. Could you even see it from the road?
It was all covered in ivy. You could have driven past it and not noticed it, you know.
And not noticed it. Yeah. So it's now looking akin to what it was.
Yeah, at one stage there was an animal had got down, a cow had got down into it because it wasn't fenced, and then was tossed to get the cow out again in the back of it, you know.
Right.
So it was in bad state, and eventually it would have fell down if I hadn't done something. There would have been a bit of history lost.
So a cow fell down it, in other words?
The cow was living in it, like it was standing.
It was okay, didn't do
the
anything?
cow was okay, but
Hey, I heard another animal fell into it. Not so recent times.
Yes.
Tell us about that. What happened, Seamus? Was it yourself? Was it?
It was myself. There was a big sheet of mesh cut for covering the top of it safely.
Yes.
And it was like when they took me to the hospital, the doctor, he had to know what happened, and I told him that I fell into the lime-kiln. And we're putting a sheet of mesh over. You fell in before the mesh went on then.
Exactly.
And he was joking about it. But the big sheet of mesh is up on top of it. And the 3 or 4 of the boys pushed it up again. And you see, and I was up here catching it. And it hit me and tossed me, and me landed my bum down in the bottom of the pit.
Well, you'd fallen, what are you talking about? About 12 feet or something?
Yeah.
It could have been quite serious.
Well, Liam and all the rest of the boys was just after adding all the tools and the stuff was lying in it. We were digging it out and cleaning it. I don't know what happened, but Liam jumped in beside me, he got in through the wall, and he says, speak to me, and I says, Roseline will kill me. And he says, you're all right, you can talk it.
So they weren't your dying words, in other words. Right. Well, there you are. I think you'll have to get a wee plaque. We know when this is finally up and running here. Seamus fell here. 2008.
Eight.
Right. So you had it up and going last year. Is that what the ashes are from? Then?
yeah,
Yes.
we let it after we'd done it up at that time, and then we had another go at it about 2 years ago, and we let it again.
And it takes a long time, doesn't it, to get the whole thing going?
It also takes a lot of stuff.
It takes a lot of stuff too.
It's fairly big.
It takes a lot of stuff.
The way we started off, we started with about 3 foot of winds cut on the mountain.
Right.
And of course, when the weight went on, they compounded down in.
Okay. And they were good burning,
They got the thing going.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we mixed
Now,
coal.
you wouldn't stand here and when it's lit.
Is that right?
There was a good heat of it.
Why here? Tom, why was it built here?
I
Is there
don't
any
know.
particular reason?
Don't know. There's a lot of other small lime kilns
The
in
smaller ones around the mountain too.
around the district.
Oh, smaller than this here.
Oh, yeah.
And the use of the lime, like I mean, apart from putting it on the soil, obviously, you could make whitewash.
Whitewash was
That's right.
all the different.
Whitewash.
Nearly
ways.
every house in the
Yeah.
country would have probably been whitewashed at that stage, and it was burnt lime was used for the whitewash.
Kevin Nairn doesn't do whitewash. He does pink and flowers and statuary and coaches and carts and any other colourful object under the sun that would draw attention. Even so, a wrong turn out of Lisbellaw led me a merry dance around the country before I found Kevin, out in his garden amid his collection, dressed in full performance gear. Kevin is a well-known storyteller, singer, entertainer and above all collector. Believe it or not, what you see in and around the house is only a small fraction of what he's amassed over the years. The bulk of it sold off a number of years ago in a huge auction. One thing he won't part with is his ability to tell a yarn. This one concerns a heart-shaped stone that he first found one day when he was a young lad out searching for 2 lost cows in a swampy place called Nan's Glen.
The clad down for about 6 inches.
Right.
And I worked my way down, and I'll just give me the stone, Joe, and I'll show you what the way it was. That's the way the stone was lying in the swamp.
Just like that?
Just like that. And I was clawing, and I seen this stone, and it was just a stone. I didn't see the shape or anything like that. It was just a stone.
Right.
And I don't know what made me keep going on, and I clad the muck from all around it, and then I could see the shape of it, that this is the shape of a heart. As you can see there, it's the shape of a heart.
Yeah.
So I turned the stone round then in the swamp, in the water and the muck, and I turned it over like that. Now when I turned the stone is pure black, but I washed that with a power hose years ago. And there didn't I see the initials JT on the stone.
So they were already on the stone when you found it, in other words?
They were, as you can see yourself, there's the Them were on the stone, as you see yourself there.
Aye.
No man could have touched that for the last 150, 200 years.
And what made you think that there was anything underneath the ground at all?
I can't to this day. That's why I'm telling you that you couldn't convince me to this day that the people that left that stone there wanted me to find it.
Wanted you to find it?
No.
And they lost 2 cattle on you. They make sure you would go looking for it.
They lost 2 cattle on me to make sure I went looking for it. And to tell you the truth, when I found the stone, I forgot all about the cattle.
Did you ever find them?
I found them about a week later, Joe.
I mean, does JT mean anything to you? Does those initials mean...
JT, the JT wasn't coming to me at all when I found it, but I ran down to the house to my mother and father, and because it was the days of, there was a lot of superstitions them days. There was ghosts in the valleys. There was ghosts at the bottom of the hills. The banshee was up at the top of the hill.
Did you believe most of those stories?
I did. I was trembling in my shoes. And no matter where you went, there was some old boy about the country that was dead was following you.
Yes.
And you were looking around you all the time. So I run down to my mother in the days of when people were very superstitious of everything. I went down to my mother and father, tell them about this great find that I got, and I says, would it be all right if I brought that stone home down to the house?
Right.
And my father and mother both wouldn't allow me to bring the stone home. They said, look, there could have been somebody buried there. It could go back to the famine. Some poor creature could have died there.
Right.
It was slowly but surely coming to me, and others people would have told me as well that it could have been left there by 2 lovers.
Right.
Walking the car road together.
And they put their initials on
And they have found the natural shaped heart stone, and they've put their initials on it.
It would be many decades before Kevin would be allowed to bring the stone home. So he had to find it again and again. Now that he has found it, he's convinced that J and T, whoever they were, can rest in peace.